Hey everybody, it's Aluna Michaels, Esoteric Astrologer, coming at you to talk about the events of April 2024. Okay, so sorry this is late again. There's been a lot happening, is probably for all of you too, with these eclipses. I don't usually go like, oh, eclipses, but the time between eclipses can be very weird. Oh, and as always, I just get to almost say thank you to the guys at Know Thyself Podcast. You guys are the best, sending me so many people, and please check them out, my listeners. We're gonna have an eclipse this it's gonna be the 8th, Monday, and that's gonna be it's a new moon, right? Sun and moon together in Aries at 19 degrees of Aries. We had another eclipse. It's called an appulse. It's like a partial eclipse, or even less than a partial eclipse, but it's still there. And that was on the 25th of March, and that was it 5 degrees, 5 degrees Libra, 5 degrees Aries, the sun in Aries, the moon in Libra. And then that time in between March 25th and April 8th can be kind of weird. I mean, eclipses primally are very strange for when we were in evolution about where'd the sun go, where'd the moon go, what's happening, But even though we know what's happening, it's just kind of a funny feeling going on. And then, of course, Mercury went retrograde, which, I always talk about, it's about interior communication. If Mercury, when it's direct, is about, it's always about knowing ourselves for sure, but it's kind of more interpersonal things or zipping around and doing what you need to do and, mechanical things and technology and stuff like that. But when it's retrograde, it really can be about getting back in touch with yourself. Also getting a lot done that you've been putting off or not having time to do. So the fact that things slow down and it's not the best time to start things, it's always great to finish things or complete or go back and say, even things you're struggling with, is this still important to me? Is this meaningful? Or can I create new meaning around it? Or does it just need to be put to the side for now or put away forever, But Mercury retrograde can be a good time to be slow and quiet within. But when it's paired with the in between the eclipses, especially when Aries is involved, because Mercury retrograded in Aries, it's like, let's go, let's do something. And it's like, oh, I don't want to just sit here in the weird feelings or unlabeled feelings, So other things you can do to really help with this is, intuitive movement sort of things, even if you're laying on the ground, sometimes starting in like a fetal curl position. And then I learned this technique from Liz Koch, or Koch, Koch, and she's an expert with the psoas tissue, which isn't really even a muscle. But you're curled in a ball, and then you can rock back and forth and go shh, and then you stop and let your body move. Like she calls it a call and response. You can think of yourself like seaweed in the ocean. And sometimes, because Aries wants to move, but it is very basic and primal and instinctive. And if you can kind of, instead of thinking words, or labeling and things like that, if you want to do some sort of primitive movement things for even 10 minutes, laying on the floor, or just putting on music and just moving and not caring what you look like, do it by yourself, or even sounds, or whatever. And not like screaming necessarily, but just kind of I don't say illogical, but no meaning around it with words and labels, and just kind of let movement go through or let sound go through or this kind of a thing. It can feel like once you do that, you can get to some clarity of words or labeling feelings or something like that. Or you're just okay letting it be what it is, or the feeling moves and you just feel kind of more normal or something. But sometimes when you're dealing with Aries, I'm not saying Aries people are primitive or primal or aren't smart, but it's like it's guttural, and sometimes it's just better to just, when people just say, I just feel like, they don't want to say, they want to just emote. And that's kind of Aries-like. And so getting yourself in that mode and kind of being free with that can help. And so anything like that is great. Even if you do yoga, maybe like not even following something specific, like just kind of do what your body wants to do or go into poses that you feel naturally drawn to. That kind of thing can really help to feel more, less fuzzy or something, whatever is going on here. So the eclipse that's coming tomorrow, I'm doing this on April 6th. Oh, I'm sorry, April 8th, 2 days from now. is the sun and moon close together, of course, because of new moon, but then there's also Chiron. And Chiron is, I think it's a comet that got caught in our solar system that's between Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn has a 30-year orbit, Uranus has an 84-year orbit, Chiron has a 49-year orbit. So it's a pretty big mover and shaker. And it's very much about healing. And when we're saying Aries can be warlike and fighting and angry. And so with this new moon about a fresh approach to something, eclipses can bring us back to like a flash of insight. Eclipses can be like an epiphany that you then let it kind of pan out and see how it works in your life over 6 months or so with eclipses. But Chiron there is so much about healing. So this whole eclipse can be about healing anger or healing, especially self-flagellation, because the moon is so much about how we care for ourselves, how you compare yourself to others, how you compare yourself to where you should be according to certain goals, things like this. So it can be really good to meditate on, just allowing yourself to be where you are at in your life right now. Of course, we need to balance things with healthy boundaries, but kind of looking at stuff you're carrying even from childhood or just hurts that are in there so long, they just seem like they're part of the furniture or whatever. And you can say, well, I don't know if I want to keep carrying this around. What can I do? How can I heal this? Or how can I accept this? Or see, is there any wisdom that has come out of that? Which is a big story of Chiron, is how does the wound become a healing lesson that you even can help others with or something. So the eclipse could be a lot about that. Especially this idea of forgiving yourself, accepting yourself as you are, and then having like hidden strengths come out of that acceptance. Like more can unfold when you're just stop fighting yourself. So I think that could be a lot about what the eclipse is doing. What's interesting when we have an eclipse, so it's going to be sun and moon and Chiron at 19. I mean, Chiron's not exactly at 19, I don't think. 18, that's okay. So that's kind of the point there of the eclipse. Venus is in Aries too, and it's going to go into Aries. Oh, that was yesterday. Yay, Venus in Aries. So Venus will get to 19 degrees on the 20th of April, which is the eclipse point. So there can be another, especially because Venus is about love, it's also about money. And that's another thing you might want to see about spending habits or something with the sun and moon in Aries, because the moon can be about how you're caring for yourself, even financially, and because it's about personal finances, where Venus is general money stuff and luxury items and things like this, and also self-care. So Moon and Venus are sort of similar like that. So when Venus goes to that eclipse degree, that can be a time to retouch back in. It's like 10 days later, and making sure you're still being kind to yourself, or kind of just feel around, whatever about that inside. And people ask about Mercury retrograde, by the way. So Mercury is going to be going back and forth at that 19 degrees Aries as well. So that would be, let's see, that's going to be from April 15, it'll hit the 19 degree point. Then it goes direct on April 25th or so, and it hits the 19 again, going direct on May 4th. So there's even more points to kind of savor in that eclipse wisdom, or figure out more good stuff from that. And then, by the way, Mercury passes the point at which it's stationed retrograde, which is 27 Aries. It goes back to 15, goes direct, and it hits 27 Aries again on May 13th. Just so some people like to know when it goes out of its complete cycle there. Which, again, is like, I think when Mercury goes direct, like it does on the 25th of April through the 13th of May, you're able to take that inner wisdom you've been sort of soaking in for the 3 weeks of the retrograde, and then see, okay, I'm putting this out there. How am I living more in my authentic self in the outside world, or expressing myself? And it's kind of like a little trial time for what, experimental time of what you've been cultivating during the retrograde. Some people are like, oh, my life is all mixed up until it completely goes out of the retrograde window. And I think there's just something about Mercury also being the trickster in astrology. It's like the little brother that puts a frog in your bed or something like that too. So there's this spiritual side of Mercury, and there's also that kind of jokester side, which isn't necessarily not spiritual, but those little things that happen, you're like, "Ah," so it's the whole Mercury retrograde can be a time where we have to have patience and just be more careful, check things twice or whatever. But generally, when it's going direct like that, it's not so much of an issue for people, but some people get really, they want to know, when does it really go direct. But the idea that it's working in with that eclipse, and so it's like being able to remind us again about whatever goals we're setting during that eclipse, or pivotal dreams you had during the eclipse time, or conversations, or stuff you're working with inside yourself. It's like you're kind of touching back on that promise, or that feeling about authentically you, which also can be so much about Aries, like that idea of that primal core. So the other thing going on that could be interesting for you is Mars is in Pisces, and of course Saturn's in Pisces. So Mars and Saturn are going to conjunct around the 10th of April, which is what's that? Tuesday, Wednesday. And Mars likes to do stuff, and Saturn is like, be careful. Mars is more, impulsive, and Saturn is more careful. Now sometimes Mars and Saturn together, like my Mars and Saturn are sort of close together in my chart, not super duper, but I took ballet all through, I was 8 till 21, and I just loved the discipline of that. I took Latin to like the discipline of grammar. So something about Mars and Saturn together, liking a system of action. Saturn's a system, Mars is the action. And so anything you can do, especially because it's in Pisces, about your spiritual goals. If it's, you want to meditate every day, or you want to practice yoga more, it's like making the goal, but that Pisces is more soft and gentle. And so making, like, let's say, a flexible set of spiritual disciplines where you're kind to yourself around it, you do it, you're not hating yourself if you don't do it, but you're creating that momentum for yourself, So that can be a great time to reconnect with yourself with that. And that happens once every 2 years, that Mars and Saturn would conjunct like that. So it's a nice refresher, and that it's happening in Pisces right now is the spiritual goals. And again, Pisces always has that theme of forgiveness, so it's happening around that eclipse too. So things like that, especially unmet goals, things that hold you back from your goals. I guess it can be your fear of success, part of Mars and Saturn together as well. And clearing out like what you think you should be doing versus what you truly want to do. If you're finding you're not fitting in, like almost like square peg in a round hole, it's like find the square hole, and be yourself. So the eclipse kind of links along with that Mars and Saturn. But the other thing to say about Mars conjunct Saturn for just regular out in the world NAS is people can be frustrated. It's like traffic jams when people are just like, duh, I want to go, man, their horn, I'm frustrated. So just being aware that people who aren't aware of astrology could just be really irritable because they want just things done, and then Mercury's retrograde and the eclipse, and they're not looking inside, they're not, oh, I can breathe at this traffic jam, and just, whatever. They're just like, I gotta get where I'm going. So kind of being aware that other people could be kind of just irritable and impatient during that time. So kind of cutting people some slack, or at least setting some limits, say, hey, you're having a bad day, and let's talk about this later or something, but that can be a Mars Saturn challenging thing. The other thing happening that's pretty cool is Jupiter conjuncting Uranus. So Jupiter has a 12-year orbit, so this would be 12, 13 years, because Uranus starts going, I don't even know the math of that, maybe it's 14 years, but so Jupiter making that full cycle and connecting with Uranus. It's happening in Taurus. This is the 17th of April. We're having the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And it's at 21 degrees of Taurus, if you're interested in that. So it doesn't just affect Taurus people, but if you are a Taurus, it is kind of cool because both Jupiter and Uranus are about personal freedom. And also the same theme about individuality and your authentic self and being like bold enough to follow your heart. And Jupiter and Uranus also have this idea of the collective, that when you're truly following your heart, even though it's what you really want to do, it somehow benefits others, includes others, and you're at your best doing it, even if at first it seems to threaten other people of what you're doing or the time you spend with them, or they think it's weird or something. It generally will pan out to bless people. It's usually the Jupiter Uranus kind of thing. But it just can be interesting in terms of, I guess some people who feel they can't speak up for themselves could be a little raw during that, because Uranus itself is just sort of sudden, like a lightning storm, and Jupiter's like a lot of something. So it can be a lot of expressing my individuality, Uranus, and you're just like, okay, I want you to express it, but people who often hold themselves back could feel like, I gotta do this right now, I gotta say this right now. And that can come from that Mars and Saturn and the eclipse and the Aries stuff and the Mercury retrograde in Aries. It's like very energy trying to come inside and go out. And some people might not be as graceful with that. So, but when you're somebody who meditates and listens to YouTube videos like this, you're probably more aware of things going on. And dreams could be very cool during that time. I mean, just this whole time of the eclipse and the retrograde. But even Jupiter is like, can be inner journeys. We think of Jupiter as being traveling, like long distance travel and stuff, but it's also spiritual travel through meditation, through dreamscape. And Uranus is like kooky, or it can be very vivid. Definitely like, whoa, like it's grabbing my attention. So noting your dreams, even through this whole month, could be really cool. You might not know what's going on about them till later, or understand what they meant. But there's often some cool message or inspirational kind of thing going on. So, okay. So if you want to get a session with me, of course, my phone number is below, 248-583-1663. Go to my website, alunamichaels.com. It's not so great to get in touch with me through YouTube. I don't get the emails from YouTube anymore, and I forget to check my messages on YouTube. Sorry. But everybody, enjoy this month. It's going to be real intriguing, and you're keeping that inner poise through that, connecting with your center and your heart, real important and good, and always good, right? Every month. So, okay, well, I'll see you next month then. Bye-bye for now.